Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Clockedin with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Clockedin with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest today. We have Gregg Morton for the second time. This is my first. Gregg, you're actually the first one to come on the podcast twice.
All right. High expectations, Jordan, I'm sure.
This is going to be a good one. I'm excited to have you on. To catch everybody up, though, Gregg did 32 years at Citigroup, many different roles, managing director, global head of the service center network, and he's done a lot of different stuff. But most importantly, I think we're in a difficult time right now. There's a recession, there's inflation, there's a lot of different stuff going on. And with Gregg's experience, I kind of wanted to touch on all that and see his perspective and see if maybe this can help some of us. But we're going to touch on a lot of different things today. Gregg, I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Jordan. And you've become somewhat famous now. Everybody's following you on your podcast. So I'm honored to be back on. So thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Absolutely. So Gregg, what do you see going on right now?
Well, here's the thing. The answer is nobody knows, Jordan. So if anybody is wanting to hang on what somebody is pontificating about, that's just one perspective. There is many perspectives on the economy. I assume you're talking about the economy.
Financially.
There are so many variables. There are more variables in the economic model now than there ever has been. And I know that sounds like a canned speech, but it's absolutely true. So, the guys that work in the, you hear a lot on the news about the Federal Reserve, and the prime rate and things like that. Well,
you want to elaborate on that a little bit? Like what's the federal, what's the Fed, what's the prime? What is that? Yeah.
I think the best way to describe it, if you think about the Federal Reserve, they are the bank for not only the government, but really all the big banks. It's almost like they are the wholesaler of money, and all the banks around the world, that U.S. banks, let's U.S., really become the retailers. They're the distribution model of the money supply in the U.S. And so the Federal Reserve sets its own terms for how to do business with them. And so the best way they can do that is set what they call the prime rate, or their lending rate, which is basically what these banks or these financial institutions can come to them and get money. And when they do that, it'll get a little bit complicated, but just think about that. Banks typically are only going to borrow it like overnight, because just in case they have some obligations that are going out, they might, if you're something as big as Citi, you might need to have $3 or $4 billion tonight to loan until in the morning. And so the rate at which they can borrow that, the Federal Reserve sets that. And so there's kind of a trickle down effect. So the more it costs for the banks to borrow, the more they're going to charge their customers downstream to borrow. So the linkage is between what the bank can get money from the Fed and the rate that they pay, down to what their customers will pay them in return. And that's an oversimplified model, but just for everybody to kind of see it, it's the Fed is really at the heart of the wholesale money business, and the banks themselves are kind of the retailers or the distribution of that throughout the U.S. And then for banks like Citi or global banks, then it's across the world as well.
Wow. So this is kind of what you're talking about when we see interest rates of a home go from 3%, sub 3% to over 6%.
Yep.
It's because the Fed takes longer. The Fed's raising the rates, in which case the bank goes, we can't deal out money because we don't want to lose money as we're handing it out.
That's right. And so there's a correlation, and again, no bank is in business to lose money, and they want to make their spread or their margin, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's even built in a lot of contracts now, like if you have a variable rate mortgage, you've heard of those, right? So if you have a variable rate mortgage, it'll be in the wording of the contract that it's based on some base rate that's tied to some treasury rate or some Fed rate, something like that.
Yeah.
So when it goes up, then yours is going to go up. Even a credit card, most credit cards are now tied to it. And that's, I don't want to jump ahead, but that's part of the danger we're in right now.
So with these credit cards linked to it, with these houses linked to it, where do you think people should position themselves? Because obviously inflation's high. There's different variables going on. There's more than there's ever been. But like, should someone take out a credit card? Like,
should they take it out?
Yeah. How should people handle this?
Well, I first of all, I'm not licensed to do any kind of financial advisory. It's like as long as everybody will accept, I'm just talking to myself. Like, I'm Greg. What would you do in the Gregg Morton household? I can do that. I can just say what I would do.
Absolutely.
So first of all, a simple answer to your question. The answer is yes. You get a new credit card if it's going to have more favorable rates than what you're paying today. So when somebody offers you to transfer a balance from your current card to a new card, and it'll be at a lower credit interest rate, that is a worthwhile thing to do. To open a new credit card because your spending is above what you're making, and you're about to run out of money, that's a really red flag. That's a bad sign for you.
Yeah.
Because in today's environment, very few people should need additional credit to live off of. That's not the first place to look.
Yeah. Because people should have their income, whatever their amount. Let's say it's $5,000 a month. You live off less than that.
You got to live off less than that. I mean, it's said a million times by a million different people, but there's no secret sauce to it. You just got to spend less. That's the deal. And
absolutely,
I don't. It's like I don't. We're in decent shape. My wife and I were retired, and I got to retire at a fairly early age. And but we change our behaviors, during this inflation period.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to pay $10 for ground beef, when I can wait for Fresh Market to have their great Thursday special, $3.99 on ground chuck. So I'll do without a hamburger on Monday, and I'll get it on Thursday when Fresh Market has the prices down. You follow me? And I've never done that. I mean, but I've grown sensitive to that. My wife certainly knows this more than I do, but it's like, what can you do? What can you control? And what you spend, a lot of it is controllable. It's we've got to eat, but what we eat, where we shop, the kinds of things that you buy in bulk, the kinds of things that, I used to eat this, but I may eat something else. All those are reasonable things to do and realistic. It doesn't matter I'm just, I'm not going to pay $10 for something. I mean, I'm just, that should be $3.99 a pound,
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Makes sense.
So absolutely. You mentioned you retired.
Yes.
Congratulations. How was the prep for that? Like, was this a long, like, oh, we started 5 years before? Were you prepping financially for a while? Like, what was your theory on all of that?
Well, I think probably back during the financial crisis, and nobody wants to have a crisis.
2008.
But 2008 was really where I started truly honing in and prepping for, what would that have been, 2019. So probably muddled along, so to speak. And then I got behind the curve because of the crisis. And then I had to really put my pedal down on the gas and start really changing and saving. Had I been doing it, kind of all along, Jordan, it would have been a different story. But I had to hustle for about 10 years. And I mean, I can tell you some things I did, but it's just I would have been a lot better off and under a lot less pressure had I put 20 years into it versus just 10.
Wow. And so you're saying that people younger today should start, is that like put money into the 401k, get life insurance? Not saying you're doing anything, but it's just like, just start saving. Like, what do you think?
Well,
like, what would you tell your younger self?
Well,
if you could.
I've told my sons and daughters but I can only do it by my mistake. I can show what my mistakes. It's not like I've got this great genius plan. I can just talk about the mistakes that I made. I've been over my head in credit card debt right when I got out of college.
Oh, wow.
Because I wasn't making that much money, but I wasn't going to be short on clothes. I wasn't going to be short on shoes. I wasn't going to have a bad car. I just, and then, you kind of get to a breaking point, and then, you end up, you're going to feel pain one way or the other. You can feel a little pain up front by kind of putting money away, or you can feel bad pain, whether it's because you tip over the edge, and you start defaulting on loans, or even to the point where you have to go bankrupt, which is a disaster. I mean, a disaster. Never had to do that, but it's like it's just chipping away at it. It's a lot easier to do that, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But the first thing is, it's the same. You got to live within your means. What do I actually have to have, and how much does that cost? And then it's budgeting 101. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to sit at home 365 days. I'd like to take a date out to the movie or dinner or drinks or something like that. But you almost have to care for that. You got to be conscious of that and have intent behind that. But pay what it costs to live.
Yeah.
Take some percentage of the gross and set it aside, and the rest of it, have a ball. I literally do what you want to do.
Absolutely.
It's not about abstinence. It's about moderation.
Moderation is the key. So what caused you to change your habits? I didn't know that. Did that happen?
Well, some of it, I think some of it was a reckoning with my pride, in terms of, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is back in the 80s, and Atlanta was kind of a hot up and coming city. And, it was kind of, I don't know what, kind of be like the Joneses next door.
Yeah, keeping up. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of keeping up. And it's almost like you're not even aware of it. And, it's like, well, a credit card bill is only $60 this month. I've got money to do that. I've got $2,000, but I'll pay $60. That's the minimum payment. And then the next month it's $2,100. And then you got to pay $65. Okay, so 65. And then the interest adds on, you keep charging a little bit. And then the next month it's $2,500. It's incrementally, it's like, as long as you're paying those minimums, you're a slave to that credit card. You're a slave to.
And what was the realization event? Because the reason I ask is because there's definitely people with inflation, with everything going on. I know I was reading today that 61% of people are paycheck to paycheck. Yep. There's a lot of people living in outside their means and on these credit cards. And like, if this could be their realization moment, like how they get out of it, because that can be intimidating to go, I spent $2,000 a month on a credit card and I only owed 50, and now I can't pay that off. Like, how am I going to pay that off?
Well, I think the reckoning, I think that's your question. It's like, when was the reckoning?
Yeah, for sure. What was the aha moment that you were like, I got to fix this?
Well, it was where, I went delinquent because I didn't have enough to pay the minimum 1 month. I mean,
wow.
That was literally it. And to some degree, I'd kept that from my wife. And so there was a true day of reckoning to let her know that, I didn't have enough money to pay the credit card bill. And so it was affecting my marriage, even though I wasn't even really thinking about it that way.
Yeah.
So just imagine that. It wasn't necessarily the credit card bill at that point. It was really, you're talking about your relationship, your whole social structure in your home could be in danger, because you probably felt the shame a little bit about, you were scared to let her know how bad it was, because you were kind of running the books of the house, to then having to have that conversation. And then it's like, boy, I just disappointed my spouse. And so that kind of got me going. And I don't think anybody, I had a very understanding relationship with my wife. I don't think anybody wants to go through that. That's just one example.
Yeah. And I mean, the scarier part about it is, when you're going through this, it's not like, oh, you tell your friends and then all the friends are like, I'm overspending too. It's a very private thing that a lot of people don't share. So it's they're having this internal stress going on, and it doesn't even allow them to really think right.
But it's, I don't know. I equate this financial planning. It's almost like being on a diet or anything, or going to do exercise. It's you've got to get into the habit of it. You got to have good habits, and it is incremental. If you start out, you can't, lift 10 pounds over your head, and your goal is to get to 100 pounds. You don't go from 10 to 100. You're going to go to 10 to 11 to 15 to 20, blah, 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 blah. It's the same with, creating that nest egg, or whatever your financial goals are. And by the way, everybody should have a goal. You should say, I want $5 million by the time I'm 60 years old or 50 years old, and check out, and then, okay, that's one thing to have the goal. Then you got to say, well, what's it going to take to get there? And literally map that out and say, this is what it's going to take. And then the hardest question is, what am I willing to do?
Yeah.
What am I willing to do? And but you got to be honest. I can talk all night about, you got to be honest with yourself. And that's another dimension about self and personal development, but it boils over into financial discipline as well.
Yeah, I think what you just mentioned is pivotal. The planning process of working backwards on a goal allows you to really see what the little actionable steps are each day. So if to get 5 million in 40 years or 25 years is $100 a day or $25 a day or whatever it is, it makes it a lot more manageable, and you can see it in the future. Now, the thing you just brought up is about how your personal development kind of related to your financial development in regard to understanding oneself and understanding and being honest. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I think probably by the time I was 30 years old, I'd had a lot of influence from people around me, and and having some success in your career. So I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, and I remember, I won't tell the whole story, but there was one of these developmental training programs, and my key takeaway from that developmental training program really had nothing to do with the content. It had more to do with just almost this epiphany that hit me. It says, you know what? All this stuff I know it already. It's just, am I willing to do it? Do I really want to change? And so then I got focused on, well, how do I change? If I really want to do it and I want to change. So it had nothing to do with the training. It had to do with myself and going down and reflect on how am I going to have a change Gregg strategy to this whole thing. And it starts out with, how well do I know Gregg? Or have I created this avatar of Gregg? Or have I created this dual personality? There's like this guy over here, but really my thoughts and what was really driving me was something completely different. And I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but I lie to myself all the time. It's never as good as I'm going to let it appear out here in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
You look stunned.
No, I'm catching on. I'm listening. No. I get what you're saying. It's where it's tough to be our authentic selves, especially in an environment where we are today, where if you go into the office, you got to be super proper. You got to say yes. You got to say please. You got to do all of that. Right. And then if you're at home with your friends, I would imagine that most people in the office are very different than they are with their friends, than even who they are by themselves.
Absolutely.
And most of the time we're around too many people to even notice who is Jordan in this Jordan moment, instead of, oh, Jordan acts like this with these people, Jordan acts like that with those people, and they all approve of Jordan. Well, sometimes people aren't going to approve of you. And you got to figure out who you really are.
And it's that process of going through that, and it starts with some really simple questions, and if that you ask yourself. It's you sit down and said, it's simple to say values and principles, but that you can call it whatever you want it to. But what do I really believe in? What is it? And there's nobody judging you when you're here. It's kind of like being naked in front of a mirror. You kind of got to expose yourself to yourself. So there's no one judging you but you, and just say, what is it? What do I want? What is it that I want? What am I willing to do to get it? And then, kind of map that out. And then you have some guiding principles and values that you're going to play by. And then have a way to check in to see how you're doing. To this day, every week, I have a reflection time that kind of looks back to say, where did you screw up? What'd you do wrong? Did you upset your wife this week? Did you get done what you said you were going to do? Did you make all the commitments that you were going to make, both personally, professionally, whatever those things were? And then be candid, say, no, well, why didn't you get it done? What was in the way? Maybe you really don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of podcasts and reels and people that are on these shows now, they're talking about, oh, well, you fail, you pick yourself up, you keep going. And I agree with that 99% of the time, but sometimes you just go, I messed up. This isn't really what I want to do.
Yeah.
So what do? You just keep going? You keep doing what you really didn't want to do, or what's really aren't. So it's not quitting. It's about redirecting or saying, that wasn't the right path for me.
Yeah. And that happens to a lot of people, where they get into something where they want something so badly and they end up getting it, realizing it's not what they think it is.
Yeah.
But one of the best benefits of this is actually extracting those things that you do like about it. that you do find valuable, so that, because sometimes we view experience, like, you can always learn from an experience, whether you like it or don't like it. There can be elements you don't like, elements you do like. Like,
Yeah.
I went this past weekend, we went snorkeling with manatees. It was great. I didn't love putting on the wetsuit. You know what I mean? But I enjoyed the snorkeling process.
Right.
I use that as a simple example just to relate how there are times in our life where we can always change. We always have the ability to make a change, be a different person. And you guys are hearing from Gregg right now how he did some of these changes in his life and how that changed his life for him.
Well, and again, Jordan, it's the challenge is you've got to want to change. You're not going to change if you don't want to. It's not. There's this old saying from a guy that I read from. It's like, he was a psychologist and he had a patient, and the patient kept talking about his background with his family, and he was wronged by his experience in school, and his employer did this, and the doctor looked up at him and says, well, I'm talking to the wrong person. Why don't you just make a list of these people and bring them in here, and I'll fix them? And the message was, it's not them, it's you.
Yeah.
You're the only thing you can control, and you're not going to change unless you want to change. That's absolutely. I only know what I know, Jordan. I'm not that well educated in all of the kind of the professional approaches. I just know what I know, and I know it through things that I've actually touched and experienced and gone through. And I know that stuff very well, and I know myself very well. And so you got to find your way, but it's not going to happen unless you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a huge point. The realizing that you want to make that change, and then really going and doing that change, and then having a system where it's a weekly check-in, like Gregg said, or it can be anything. But as long as you're holding yourself accountable, or somebody's holding you, or a group is, it really provides a lot of access, because most of the time we can go, I could tell Gregg 10 things right now and he'll be like, Jordan, great job. They might never get done. But we have that fulfillment of it already getting that great job. And half the time we don't even go out there and complete the job. Yeah. So we got to make sure that we're doing what we need to do.
Well, I don't want to get you off track, but I'm a big proponent of habits. I both psychologically and also materially. This thing about creating, we all have habits. We all have unconscious behavior, and some of that unconscious behavior keeps us alive, right? Like, Jordan, I don't think you're sitting there going, okay, heart, beat again. Okay, breathe in again. So you've got this subconscious thing going on inside of all of us, right? And some of our brain is creating all of that. So you need those things happening. But there's a lot of other decisions and activities and things that we're doing that we're on automatic pilot, and we're really you can call it habitual, or it's like not even being conscious of it. And so the first thing to say is, well, I don't like that behavior. I want to change that behavior. And then you got to say, well, what is the behavior that you're going to create to the point where it becomes automatic for you, or unconscious, or subconscious,
Yeah.
Is the way that, if you can read the books about building habits, it's about making it building them into your subconscious, conscious.
Can you just give an example about that, of like one time it happened with you? And the reason I ask that is because, like, we understand what's being said, but like when there's actually an applicable example to it, it just allows people to envision it a little bit further. So I think the example could definitely provide some perspective.
Let me give you one that's kind of in a whole different realm. Okay.
You're good. I love the bouncing around. I love it.
But when you and I met, I had I weigh about what I weighed when I met you.
Okay.
That's 100 pounds less than I weighed 12 years ago.
Really?
And I had carried that extra 100 pounds probably, it started building up from 185 when I was in college to some point along my adult life to where I got to be 285.
Wow.
Yep. And and I'm not going to get to, if you want to know the motivation behind why I actually, and you can imagine somebody weighs 100 pounds more and you're in you want to dress nice and you want to be accepted by your friends and all that. But you've got this, you don't feel good. Your health is all those things. And you go on all kinds of diets. I mean, I used to eat nothing but steak and pork. I mean, I did all that stuff. So everything imaginable. But then over probably a 2.5 year period, I lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
And just a couple of elements around creating habits. Number one is that I used Weight Watchers. And one of the key points of Weight Watchers was keeping a food diary.
Yeah.
So the process to this day, I still, kind of keep up with the food. And it used to be the points on Weight Watchers, but it's kind of the calories on MyFitnessPal. So but it's that building a habit of writing that down has had a 12-year impact on that. So I didn't end up saying, well, I'm going to eat less every day. It was like, I'm going to keep track of all the food I eat.
Actionable step. Yeah.
And subconsciously that just said, oh, somewhere inside, and I'm not even aware of it, triggers, it goes, well, Greg, you can't eat this candy bar, you got to eat some grapes and get satisfied by that.
Yeah.
That makes sense because you've only got 300 calories left in the day and you still haven't had dinner. And so I'm not going to break the habit of keeping up with that. So subconsciously you make a different choice.
Yeah.
That works. It's that ingrained.
Absolutely. Whatever you prioritize is going to occur.
And it was, I added exercise into the mix. And, people would talk about doing this and this. And I read this book about the power of habits.
Yeah.
And so I'm not just making this up. And then there was this section about exercise. Like, well, take one step. Just that's all you're going to commit to is taking one step. Or maybe not even that. It's like, to this day, I still put my sneakers outside of my bedroom. That's the first thing I see.
Yeah.
Triggers the habit subconsciously. Well, Greg, you're not going to trip over your sneakers. You're going to put them on and run. You follow me?
Yeah. It's setting yourself up for success in different situations where
it's like psychologically, if you do, I encourage everybody to look at how do habits get built. And there's several books out there, but one of the first is it's a process. There are behaviors. And so now what you want to do is you want to almost like overwrite the software in your head to say, well, I need to stop running this program and run this program. And now this program is I'm going to wake up, I'm going to have a shot of coffee, I'm going to put on my sneakers, have a shot of coffee, go out the door, run for an hour, come back in, guzzle 20 ounces of water, have my favorite shot of espresso, kiss my wife, and then go jump in a swimming pool. That is every day.
Yeah.
And I don't even think about it, but I'm trying to get into the habit of going to the gym, and I haven't quite gotten there yet. And part of the problem is that, I got to go out of my house. I got to literally go to the gym, and lift weights and stuff. And I've got to, so I'm not, I have a lot of failure in me. I haven't gotten that habit built yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the funny part is that you say that. When I was in marathon, like I ran the New York City Marathon last year. And when I was doing that, when you know it, you get the runner's high, you just get obsessed with running.
Yep.
And then you get the part where you're like, I should probably lift weights. And you go, that sounds awful. Like, that's terrible. And then what ended up happening to me was the new year happened. And I was like, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, you start getting a runner's body. Because when you run, you burn muscle.
Right.
And I ended up going to the gym. And the first few days I was like, dude, because like it's so hard because you get so sore, you can barely even move. And then I just started getting into the habit of doing it way more frequently. And then I would run on the side, but it's just hard to maintain them all. But they're definitely, you have to set a time. And like, if you're going to go do it to that hour, then you do that hour at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, oh, now we're going in the car, we're driving, we're going to the gym, we're coming back, whatever it is. But every habit, you're right, it does take time. And people, I think, bring to the self-awareness of that habit of like, maybe at 9 o'clock, I put the TV on and maybe I could trade in the TV for a book. Or maybe every morning I've been sleeping in because I'm staying up so late. Like, once you start becoming aware that your habits are developing as they're developing, then you actually have a chance to make that change. The first step's awareness.
Well, it's awareness, and it's got to get to a point where it becomes automatic. And there is literally a science behind it. It's like, if you think of any habit that you got, and these folks, the psychologists that are smart about that, they'll show it to you. There is a trigger. It's like when I smoked in college. Only time I smoked is when I went out to bars. When I was drinking, cigarette went with that.
Yeah,
that was the gig. I'd go to class, 4 or 5 days a week, not have a single cigarette. But then on Friday night, when we went to, the War Eagle Supper Club, there was a menthol Salem and a rum and coke in the other hand. It's just silly.
Yeah.
But there's psychology behind it. There's a trigger.
Yeah.
And there's the process that you want to create. And then there is some other steps. And then there is a reward at the end. You got to reward yourself. And if you do that, and they'll tell you, over some period of time, I don't know how long that it'll take where you have to be conscious of it literally gets embedded into your subconscious. And that trigger is all you'll have to do. That's all you'll have to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the habits that was big for me was when I did 75 hard. It's, I don't think I ever really talked about it here, but it's this guy, Andy Frisella. And I did it actually back in 2020, and not conveniently, but COVID was going on. And the whole concept of it is not drink, work out twice a day for 45 minutes, read 10 pages of a book, have a gallon of water, and then take a picture. Yeah. And you guys can tell that when I say this, I wheeled off 6 things. Usually people can't wheel off 6 things. It's because I know it. It was like, Greg, you telling me your morning schedule. You're like, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. Like everyone, because it's ingrained. So when I was doing these for 75 days, once you start getting into the habit of doing it, it's like that discipline actually becomes freedom. It's very fascinating that as soon as you complete all your work, you're like, now I can enjoy. Now I can go do whatever I need.
And not only is it freeing, but it's rewarding, because again, reward yourself for what you just did. Have that more expensive espresso than you did, just the whatever coffee is that you would have when you wake up in the morning, something like that. All of that, and I'm a big proponent in this thing up here. It is your best friend or your worst enemy. And I probably, if I were to give advice, get to know how this thing works. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And we're coded a certain way, and you got to tap into that code. You can make it work for you, or it'll work against you.
What are some of the ways that you work on your mindset and make sure that you're in a positive place? I mean, especially with transition from like working every single day to retirement, like changing scenery? How does that?
Well, the thing is, it's a broad question, Jordan. But
Yeah.
it's like, if you're wanting to do something, if you are wanting to make a change, the first thing I would do, in this planning session is sit down and go, well, why am I wanting to change? What's motivating me to do this? What am I willing to do? All of those kind of questions, and then watch your brain react to that. It's almost like I'm not a big meditator. I don't meditate, but just watch how you think and jot down what comes to mind.
Yeah.
Just see about this. Like, oh, well, I want to go, I want to move. I want to move to Montana. Okay, move. To move.
Yeah.
Well, but this. Okay. Well, then, but in your mind, you go, well, I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that. Well, at least you're getting that out and you can address it. But it's always been there. All you've been talking about before is I want to go to Montana or Wyoming. But you haven't done it.
Yeah.
Sit down and say, why haven't I done it?
Yeah.
And have a long conversation with yourself. Why haven't I done it? If I really want that, why haven't I done it? And then watch your brain. See what excuses you get. And those excuses you can actually turn into your action plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see this a lot because I believe Tony Robbins said it. It's like that the questions we ask ourselves, essentially the whole concept is that the better questions we ask ourselves, the more successful we can become. So instead of asking ourselves like, oh, what's for breakfast today? It's back to the prompt that Greg was working on. Why haven't I moved to Wyoming? Because I have a job that's not remote. Okay. Step one, get a remote job. You know what I mean?
There are jobs in Wyoming.
Yeah, or quit and just move to Wyoming.
So I would ask somebody if they told me that. I said, so have you ever applied for a job in Wyoming? Do you know where you live? Do you know what city in Wyoming you would live? Do you know what that looks like? Okay, what's that going to take? I think a lot of people, and I do mentor a lot of people, and I have over my careers, they really have, they have it, but they haven't kind of thought through it.
Yeah.
And then put that change model to test and say, what are you willing to do?
Yeah. So I would honestly say, like, for anybody listening, just pause this podcast for a moment and really ask yourself, what have you been holding back? What haven't you been getting done? Just because usually when we listen to these podcasts, it can be very passive. It can be working out. It could be this, but like really take the action right now, as Greg already provided the steps to do, because I think will provide a lot of value. But yeah, just continue on with your point.
Well, no, I don't know if I'm making a point, Jordan, but one of the things that you'll learn if you do become a fan of learning how you work, truly, I really, that's the best advice. Learn how you work this, and I'm talking about here, because 99% of what we experience and go through and our body functions are all right up here, but we know so little about it. So I'm not saying control it, learn about it. And there are certain things you can tap into and certain things you can avoid. You can't control it, but you can avoid it, or you can tap into it. It's powerful in in good habits and bad habits, or good change and bad change. But
Your brain. Yeah.
And I will say what I've learned is, think about this, Jordan. When are you the most happy? When are you the happiest?
I've done a similar activity, not a similar one to this, but like essentially what it was naming 20 things that make me happy. And it was like when I sing in the car, when I'm with my girlfriend, when I'm walking outside, when I'm in Florida, when I'm exploring new places, when I'm on vacation, when I do a business deal, when I advance a relationship, doing rock climbing, I enjoy rollerblading. When am I happiest? I'd probably say when I have a combination of those things occurring, to be honest.
Yep.
When it's probably like 3 or 4 of those, like it's a sunset, I'm walking Bayshore, Madison, like just, you got to paint the whole picture. But when you have multiple of those elements, that's when I become happiness. And it's really when I'm present too.
And if I were to say something like, would you agree that everything that you just mentioned, one common element they have is that you choose to do that? You want
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many things in your life do you do because you don't have a choice?
I mean, some, but I know that I'm always in control and I can pick whatever I want to do, essentially.
We're the happiest when we're in control.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think science will show that. We like to be in control. And a lot of our lives are in the control of other things or other people or circumstances. It's like we were talking about credit cards earlier. Well, then when I say being a slave, well, then you've got to pay me. You know, so now you've just turned over. You know, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur these days, but yet then you're going to put a bunch of credit card debt on there. What's that?
Yeah.
You've now you're not in the you're working for the credit card company. You're not working for yourself.
So then the real question is, how do you become in control of every aspect of your life?
And you can't, I personally, I'm not strong enough to know that or have that ability if I don't start right here. If I don't start with me and say, how unconscious am I? Am I just kind of going with the flow? Or am I picking the stream that I'm going to be in, you know, the path or whatever you want to call it? Am I, you know, you use any word you want. Am I a victim or am I the aggressive?
Yeah.
Am I, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely. And it comes down to those better questions we start asking ourselves. We'll start getting better answers.
What if you never sit down and ask them and go through it and just truly think about it and be honest with yourself? It's like, I'm certainly not a marriage counselor either. Do I really want to be married to Faith? I ask myself all the time, not because I question it, but I can tell you I love her more because this is where you can get in trouble in your relationship. It's like, you know, I'd had one of these really powerful sessions with myself and I thought about her a lot while I was running. And I was thinking about her. I was going, God, I really, you know, Faith means everything to me. I live a lot of my life through her. I can't imagine not being with her, blah, 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 all that stuff. Even at 63 years old, I'm still like, feel that way.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So, you know, I turned in, I'm like third house from the turn into our neighborhood. And I'm going, you know what? If I wanted to, I could just keep running. If I wanted to, I don't have to stop at that door. I don't have to go back inside of that house where Faith is.
Yeah.
I said, I literally choose to go home to Faith. And so I had this in my mind, right? So I run in and she's asleep. And I'm excited to tell her that I want to be with you so bad. I choose this. And like, I just had this thought that it's not because I feel obligated because we're married. I want to come see you. And I thought, man, what a big romantic thing to say. And she looks up at me. She says, you better be glad I'm still here.
That's funny.
But it is a mental thing that we want to be in control. And you can't be in control unless you know what the dashboard is, what the levers are. And you don't know what the levers are unless you examine them. So I'd really encourage your listeners, people that I come across, is get to know yourself, identify what it is you want, what are you willing to do to get it, and then go step by step. And all of a sudden, 10,000 steps are taken, and you're in a very different place than you were before. You could walk to Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is great. It's so true, because if we don't question what we're doing, learning about ourselves, learning why we're doing stuff, then like you said, we just wander through life instead of intentionally living in it and living this exceptional life that I think everyone wants to have. It comes down to making a couple decisions, being prepared, knowing what you want, instead of being, oh, this is like what life dealt me. No, you got to go out there and make it happen. And it's being that difference you want to see.
Well, you're around a lot of people, right, Jordan? A lot of professional people.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And you're around people who work for large companies and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Do you see anybody that ever tell you how miserable they are, or they hate their job, or they don't like this or that? Do they ever say that to you?
When you can get them at a bar, you hear it.
Okay. Well, when you mentor people and you've been around as long as I have, you hear that a lot. Just how miserable people are, and just they're frustrated. They deserved a promotion. They just, they're stuck in this job. My boss doesn't like me and all that. And then you sit down and you say, okay, so what have you done about it? What have you done? Yeah. And so tell me how you're positioning to lead this company. People who worked for me or worked in the same company, and I'd be mentoring them. And they said, so when are you going to leave Citi?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to leave Citi. Well, so it's your boss. Okay, so when are you going to go in another department? Well, I've applied for 4 jobs. I said, well, what does that job entail? And then I started examining them. I'm not criticizing. I'm coming across as, a little judgmentally. Everything. So what have you done? So I saw the posting and I know I have those skills, but I said, the posting's not the job. Have you ever gone over there and said, hey, can I sit down with you for an hour during my lunch break and watch what you do? Yeah. Have you ever met the manager of that group and said, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time? And I'm interested in your department. And hey, I'd be willing to come, I'm talking about somebody that's not on a clock, but professional, say, hey, if you ever have a project, I'd love to kind of hang around and, I'll give you some input on it. No obligation, stuff like that. Do you know what it means to be in that role? I mean, I've talked to people who want a promotion, but they have no idea what it means to be that person.
Yeah.
And they don't behave that way. So if you don't know what that person is or what they do, how are you going to know, well, I need to prepare for that? Yeah. That makes sense?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of valuable insight, because especially I see it a lot with my generation and even people a little bit older, constantly, why am I not in this role? Why am I not here? Why am I not at these places? Instead of asking like the victim questions, it could be more proactive of just go ask to help for free. Like go ask to look for an hour, go ask to see what they're up to, see how you can assist. Because there's so much time where everyone's like, why would I help out for free? You know what I mean? It's like, what's in it for me? And like sometimes you got to think about the other person.
Got to think about the other person and prepare yourselves. Kind of back to the beginning of our discussion. What am I doing to prepare for when that opportunity, or am I just applying for a job because it's a higher level than what I'm in?
Yeah.
That's so, I think doesn't say much. I'll put it that way about how much change you really want to go through. It's like, this is just an exaggeration, but I would be doing like these town halls, and I'd have a couple of hundred people in there, and we'd be talking, and I'd say, hey, you want to talk about careers? How's it going? Stuff like that. Somebody would say, hey, well, I want your job. I said, really? You really want my job? And I think they meant is they wanted my paycheck. I don't think they really wanted my job. And I said, do you really want 7 bosses? And you want 6 bosses that really have no impact on your day-to-day work, but they can impact your performance at the end of the year? Do you really want to be matrixed across the globe? Do you want to be away from home 260, 250 nights a year? Do you, and oh, by the way, it's not glamorous. The cities sound great, but when you're trying to eat dinner in Singapore off of a $50 budget given to you by this big corporation, you don't eat very well when, and I was fairly senior at Citigroup, so do you really know what that job is like? Have you ever had to, be on the spot in front of 10 other like executive level people that might be two down from the CEO, and you're doing a presentation and they think they're the smartest people in the room, and all they did coming into there was just want to challenge everything you said? You really want to live your life like that every day? If the answer is yes, then okay, I'll tell you kind of how to get there.
Yeah.
But the money doesn't. The money is not saying it's bad, but if it's for that, man, I'm telling you, you're willing to sacrifice a lot. You're willing to do a lot.
So you're bringing up a lot of points that most people never think about, and most people aren't having the conversation about, which I love. So one of your specialties is also your management. How would you, because we see it all the time, people who they get promoted and now they're manager. It could be a sales position where it's inside sales and they're inside sales manager. But being a manager is very different than the act of being in sales.
Right.
So for you, how do you view management, and how can someone kind of excel in that?
Well, first of all, it starts with the definition, Jordan. And for me, managing, let's just say a team, managing a team. We're not talking about an individual contributor. We're talking about managing an organization or a team. Yeah. Managing and leading, you want a blended model, but really you have to do separate definitions, or I do. And managing means that you're optimizing processes.
Okay.
You're creating value. Efficient. You're creating value. I won't necessarily call them efficient, but certainly you're getting more out of it than you're putting into it. That's the whole goal. So it's really about process maximization. And you can call it could be efficiency, it could be quality too, but let's just say leadership is about maximizing value of people.
Okay.
Enhancing the value of the process by enhancing the value of the people that are doing it. So in simple terms, management is processes, leadership is people. And so the way to create value in people is to allow them to optimize their potential.
Okay.
Optimize process, optimize potential. And so leading isn't telling. Leading is asking questions like, okay, you made this decision. Did you consider this? Or they come with a presentation and they say, well, we're suggesting to that. And instead of saying, well, how about this? Go do this or do that. The other side is like, well, tell me all that you thought about, or you delegate that decision and you say, okay, well, you want it. We'll see what the outcome is. But I don't want to get sidetracked. Value out of processes, value out of people. Two different things.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then and then the really successful people, bring those two things together. They are certainly got to know the business processes and strategy, but then how do they take this team, this organization, this person, and create value for the organization because you're optimizing their potential?
Gotcha. So There should be like another role for it. There should be another title instead of it being manager and leader. Like, because no one thinks about it as leader. It can be like, yeah, I see what you're talking about. It's the combination of two of them. So it's two different types of roles. And if you could view them through each lens, kind of makes a lot more sense on how you can manage.
Right. And I've looked at companies and their performance management, and they think they're doing it, but they really aren't. And if you looked at the detail underneath the goals and the way the goals are structured in that company, they blend. They'll come out with things that says, okay, well, I'm going to rate you on the what. And they think those are the management processes and your financial targets and efficiency and all that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to grade you on the how. And they think that's leadership. But if you look inside of the goals and objectives on the how side of that equation, it's still, I could put them all in the management side of it.
Really? So you think a lot of businesses are missing the leadership?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think, I know. And since I've retired, I've been doing some work. I'm not a big fan of consultants, quite candidly. Certainly, I should say consultants that are in the financial services at a very global banking level. I can name biggest consultants, and I'm just not a fan. I've done them all. But I've done some work through universities. I like to associate myself with universities who then work with companies and stuff like that. And it's across the board, man. It's across.
Really?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned a little bit. What are you up to nowadays? How did the transition to retirement occur? And then, because you're telling us the story about how you're traveling 250 days a year, going to. Now we're a homebody. Like, what's that transition like? I feel like you got to get mentally prepared for like, my life's about to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's COVID didn't help. I tell you that. But I it's like I kept the good part of traveling. Like right away. My wife and I travel a lot, and and then we're very fortunate. We have a couple of 3 grandkids and stuff like that. And we've had some stuff with our grandkids. But, I've got, I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I do thoroughbred horse racing. So I breed and race horses. And, by the way, for anybody, we have we're very kind to our horses. We actually, any horse that we retire, they have a good end. They get retired to a farm where they get to feed the rest of their life. Or if they want to keep running and playing, I can give you multiple stories of horses where we've placed them with young children that are doing equestrian riding.
Wow.
Those are thoroughbred horses too that do the jumping. Yeah. So there's a lot of ex-race horses that are now like, I don't know what you call it, the equine, equestrian type movies. Yeah. So I do that. And then we've got like the partner, the general manager of the whole operation. He owns 51%. And then there's 5 of us that have the other 49. And he operates off of, he has up in New York. So a lot of ours are New York bred, and we race up in Belmont and Aqueduct and
it's incredible.
Minor leagues. There's a little track called Finger Lakes, which is, it's not much of a track there. And then they winter in my home state in South Carolina. So there's this little farm in the middle of nowhere where they spend the winters and where all the babies are. So once they're weaned from their mother, they go to the farm in South Carolina and all that. It's cool. And then we go, once in a while, get a call and the managing partner is going to go to a horse sale in Ocala, Florida, which is, as you know, is like 100 miles up the road from us. And I'll go up there and participate in a horse sale, stuff like that. And then my kid, I have a son that lives in Lexington, Kentucky, which is like the home of thoroughbred breeding sales. And I've got a son who lives in Louisville, Kentucky, which that's where the Derby is. So, I do a lot of around horses. I don't know anything about them, but I do. I love them. They're just great, great, smart animals. And then, like I said, I associated myself with the University of South Florida, and we do a lot of work through it's called the corporate learning. It's kind of an offset of the business school. And then they've got some clients. I won't mention their names, but that's why I'm very confident in my data. I've worked with some really big names that it's amazing it's amazing they make the money they do.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen from people who have retired, that seems to be the strategy of like picking up certain projects that seem of interest, and they can be wide ranging, whether it's the horses, whether it's the consulting, and then just doing it on kind of an ad hoc basis and just developing whatever comes of it, because it really gives you a wider perspective. It allows you to continue to learn
and things like that. You have some control. I mean, delegating to a horse is pretty tough, but they control you. But you kind of put as much time into it as you want to, and if you don't want to, you don't kind of have to do that and stuff. Like the USF thing is literally, I've said no as many times as I've said yes to engagements over the last couple of years, and then but people I never say no to is there's the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce that I'm actively involved with, and then my actual degree, what I was trained in college, I was a political science major. It's what I did my undergrad and graduate work in.
Oh wow!
I'm kind of a political nerd, and it's been fertile ground over the last few years in the political arena. So. I can only take small doses of that now because my head will explode. And if you don't mind, can I just put a plug in for the United States of America? And I'm not a flag waver, but we have the best system of public management ever. We do. And the thought, the intellect of the founding fathers and the people who constructed this is absolutely phenomenal. And the system does work, but is dependent on the inputs into the system. And we are putting we got to get better raw material going into the system. And I know a lot of your watchers are of your generation, and I'm hopeful my generation gets out of this. We need to step aside, and what world you want to build, your generation, your peers, your colleagues, I'm hoping that y'all will step up so that we can get better inputs into the system. The system's great. We mix up the system itself with the inputs, and we just got a lot of bad inputs right now. And I'm not talking about taxes, no taxes, war, no war. I'm just talking about we got to see further into the future. We do. And everybody on this, watching this podcast knows that. You see the world changing more rapidly than the people that are doing the inputs right now.
And
it's a fact. I don't know. I mean, it's a fact.
No, you're right. And I would say to everyone, I mean, this relates to everything we've been discussing, whether it's the leadership, the finances, the political. Everything you do has to have a long-term perspective and understand where you're going to be in 10, 20, 30 years and work on it each day, little by little. It's difficult with the political system because it's so back and forth for 4 years. And then people are in and out, and that's where the back and forth kind of is happening, where it's like we need the progress of unifying together. But I would say for the individual, if you start taking things in a long-term perspective, it's going to wake you up a little bit, and then you can start to work backwards on what you want to have in your life.
Exactly. And but that's kind of my 2-minute interlude there. It's just we've got a good system, and I'm just hoping everybody that you're surrounded by and that your contemporaries just help shape the input differently than it is today. And I'm talking about, you can call it both political parties, both left, right, whatever you want to call it. Those inputs are flawed. The system, I won't call it the system, the institution is good. It just isn't being allowed to operate the way it's supposed to operate. I'll go to my
grave. I think everyone feels some sort of tension over the last few years. Either way, whether it's either one. And for yourself, what do you think would be the best action for anybody in this day and age to really take advantage? Like, if you can leave them 3 steps after this podcast, what would it be just in life, like to really live that exceptional life? It can be regarding finances, it could be regarding your life, it could be regarding whatever. And I know it's very broad, but I mean, for you, what do you think you'd want to pass down to people so that they know, so they don't have to make some of the same mistakes?
I just don't become automatic. Don't become unconscious. Be with intent. Do everything with intent. And the only way to do that is to know what you want to do. And I don't want to say you have to lay it out in written form all the time, but think about it and take a view on a lot of every aspect of your life. And because we're programmed in our DNA and in our evolution as a human to make our brain work as less as it can. I mean, it's just we are coded that way. You can study that. And so you got to test your brain and be aware of what it's up to and what it's doing, and tap into it and point it in the right direction. So that's a big key. And don't take things so seriously. It's just, I'm telling you, it's like, there's an old saying, it's like, everybody thinks they're special, and if we're all special, nobody's special. There's not. That we're all special. We have a lot of commonality versus being special, and have fun, and don't hurt anybody else.
I love that.
No, I love that. It's not a complicated equation. It's just not, you can tell stories about a lot of people worse off than you are. And all those things that you can see on these, how those little things pop up on Facebook and these great quotes, historical, they're all right. They're absolutely right. But are you really going to live by it? Are you really going to do anything about it? Or was like, oh, well, that was nice. That made me smile for a minute. Well, are you going to really do anything? Well, it's not worth it. It was written on. Just pass by. Do something. Be happy. If you're not happy, get happy. And if you don't know how to get happy, sit down and think about what's going to make me happy.
That is massive, because we're in an age where everyone's seeking the money, but it's really the happiness we should be after, and whatever provides that happiness will make the change.
Money's good. I mean, good. Money's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with money, but that's not the end game. I mean, it's not. It's not. And it's be happy. It's like, it's like, I'm just amazed at people who have a lot of money. And then, like you travel and you see these places and you go, and you see this yacht and it's just sitting there for like 355 days a year. And then you comes up and use it for 10 days. Well, why don't you just rent the damn thing for 10 days? I mean, if you got that much, why do you have to own a yacht? Or what are you going to do? What is Shaq going to do with 20,000 square foot house? I mean, really, if I had all the money in the world, and I've done this exercise. My son's a big car enthusiast. He changes cars more than he changes underwear, and he says, "Oh, you should get this." I said, "So, Greg, I literally thought this. If I had unlimited amount of money, I know what car I would buy." And it's an expensive car, but it's not like something like over the top expensive.
Yeah.
It's like this car can do anything, give me the same company, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, so why?
Yeah. No, it really is that we got to focus on being happier, because there's so many millionaires that are so depressed. And one of the things that really held with me was that when in your 20s, everyone wants to be a millionaire. But when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, everyone wants to be 20. And it's really enjoy whatever moment or place you're in right now and try to make yourself the happiest you can be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think that will go a long way.
It will. But nobody's going to take me at my word. It's just, you got to give it a try. Give it a try. And think about if you're not where you want to be, define where it is you want to be, and then build a path toward that. That's probably what frustrates me more, is when you talk to people and they're either not happy or whatever it is, they're frustrated or whatever. And you say, well, let's talk about what's your plan? How are you going to get out of this? What are you going to do next? What do you blah, 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 blah. And you'll be not amazed, but very rarely has the person really kind of thought out an exit strategy, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And it's definitely very valuable, because then you become solution oriented. And at that same point, then you can make progress. And when you make progress, it really makes you a happier individual, because you're actually moving towards something you want.
Exactly. And that's what we all want. We want to be in control. And by having control, it's going to raise your happiness level. And I think you will find that you are obliged to a lot in your life. And so kind of deal with those obligations.
Absolutely. So, Gregg, this has been absolutely amazing. You're so insightful. Is there any last words you want to leave, or something you want to tell people somewhere to go, or anything?
Well, I will say this: I'm a very optimistic person, and that's why the quicker we can kind of make a generational change in society, I think we'll be a lot better off. There's not a single problem that's out there that cannot be solved. I know that too. We just got to knock down the walls so that we can get these problems solved. And it starts with the individual, and one of the things, Jordan, anything I say hasn't been said before, and anything you read hasn't been written before. You can go back to the 12th century or what, even back prehistoric times, and before history was recorded, and all these fundamental, they may have a little bit different language given the contemporaneous of it, but it's very simple. It's very, very simple and basic, and that is, do what you can do and have it pointed in the right way. Take care of yourself and what you do, and don't worry about the other 10 billion in the world right now. Do what you can do. And we talked a little bit about politics. Are you voting in your county council? They have more impact on your life than Donald Trump or Joe Biden. They do, to a very, very high degree. They decide what your school systems look like for your children. They decide what your taxes look like. They decide which bridges are going to get built. They decide, what roads are going to get paved. They're going to decide about the quality of the water that you're drinking in your county. But those are the lowest number of people voting are in local elections. We all get hyped up on the national, and it has really a small impact on our day-to-day lives. So do what you can do. You be a better person. You take care of yourself. You head in the right direction, and then just start spreading the word on that. And just the more we get in that army, and be happy.
Be happy. I love it. Happy. No, and that's a great point. Gregg, thank you so much for coming on. This
Thanks for
was
asking me.
definitely amazing.
No, I wish I could see everybody out there. And if I can ever help, just let me know, Jordan. If any of your listeners, these are fun topics for me to talk about. You and I have a chance to chat once in a while on things. But if there's ever something I can help with, let me know.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.